Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another House Rules video. In this one I'd like to cover character advancement. Now this is a video I thought would be pretty short, because while I was considering it, I could only really think of two ways of advancing characters. Basically levels and points by, where you spend your experience. But as I went into it, I found more and more games handled it different ways. So I've now got a large pile of games in front of me where I have to mention how they handle it slightly differently. Now, obviously, it turns out there's so many different ways I'm not going to be able to cover absolutely everything, but we'll go over to the desktop and we'll have a look at a few examples of how character advancement's treated, and then we'll go over to the document where we're writing our game together and we'll decide how we're going to include it in that game. So, first of all, as usual, we have Dungeons & Dragons. Now this is 5th edition, but it handles it in a very similar format to many of the earlier versions. Basically through experience points which gain you levels. When you reach a certain threshold, you go up a level. And each character class gains certain abilities. So the fighter here, at first level, they've got fighting style and second wind. At second level, they gain an action surge, one use. At third level, they get a martial archetype. And they've also got things like their proficiency bonus, which every 4 levels goes up by 1 point. And this is how their skills are determined. So all the skills which they have proficiency with go up every 4 levels. And they get things like hit points. But basically that's how you advance. You get abilities, some of which you can choose from. So you get your ability score improvement at 4th level. And you can choose where you put the points to that, or whether to spend it on feats. So there is some flexibility in there, but mainly every fighter at first level is going to be pretty much like every other fighter, because they're getting exactly the same proficiency bonuses, they're getting the same features. There's very little change to the characters except by being completely different classes. Next, I'd like to use Shadowrun here to demonstrate the spending experience to buy your character improvements. So Shadowrun uses Karma. If we flip to page 150 here, we can see Karma costs for skills. General skills cost 2 times the current rating. So if you're buying up your firearm skill, your ability to shoot every kind of gun, from 3 to 4, well, the current rating is 3, so it costs 6 points to buy it up. Concentrations cost 1.5 times. So if you've concentrated, instead of being able to fire all guns, you can just shoot all pistols. It's 1.5 times the cost. So your pistol skill going from 4 to 5 will cost 6 points. Current rating times 1.5. And then you've got specialization. So the example here gives the Beretta 101T. So you're specialized in that particular type of pistol. You're not even skilled in all pistols, just that one. It costs 1 times the current rating. So buying it from 5 to 6 only costs you 5 karma. And languages cost 1 time the current rating. And that goes for all types of skills, not just firearms. If you're buying up sort of magical skills, etc. Now there are different costs for magically bonding spells and different abilities, but that's how it's working. The US getting karma for completing adventures, doing spectacular pieces of role-playing, come up with fantastic ideas, you might get bonus, and you can spend those points directly. Now, Shadowrun allows you to keep karma and spend it during play, but mainly you're going to be spending it to improve your character. And that's the way it works, that the higher skills get, the higher the cost involved in buying them up. But apart from these 2 main methods, there are lots of different subvariants. So let's have a look at some of those. So, returning to Dungeons & Dragons. Now this is 3rd edition, my favourite version, and it handles part of the game slightly differently. So, like the other versions of Dungeons & Dragons, you go up levels, and that increases your ability to hit things, it increases your hit points, it increases your saves, increases your access to spells. But skills are slightly different, because if we turn to the Barbarian here on page 24, we can see class skills, and it gives a list of class skills. Skill points at first level and skill points at each additional level. So level 4 plus intelligence modifier. So if they're smart, they're getting 4 plus a decent bonus. And those skill points can be added to the skills. Now class skills cost basically 1 point to put up. So you're spending one of these skill points to improve a skill by 1 point. It doesn't scale. It's not that the higher the skill, harder it is to increase. Where it does change, though, is skills which aren't class skills. So ones which should only be available to other classes, you can buy at a higher cost. So it costs multiple skill points to improve those. So if you want to play a barbarian who knows about magic, that's going to cost you more, but you can do it. And it adds a level of flexibility to 3rd edition, which I really like. Because even at 1st level, you can be customizing your character. You can be putting points into sneak. You can be putting points into knowledge skills. And creating a character which is subtly different and has a range of different abilities to every other member of that same class. Next up is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Now, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay uses careers, which are absolutely wonderful. They add a huge amount of tone to the game, because instead of starting as a heroic paladin, you're starting off as a rat catcher or beggar or something like that. Now, within the careers, they're kind of treated like a class. So you have different things you can buy with your experience. So a player character has done an adventure, they have some experience, and if they're a tollkeeper, they can buy up their weapon skill, their ballistic skill, their willpower, or their intelligence. They can also buy different skills, but once they have bought all the abilities within that, used up all the skills, they then have to move on. And we've got these career exits, and you spend experience to move on to a different career. And likewise, once you've moved on to another career, you've got the bonuses you can buy with experience, or you can move on, or you can buy the skills. There's also different 75% chance abilities, so you get advantages beyond just normal skills. Where this differs slightly is within the magical classes, because they are basically level-based, but they're handled within careers. So you start off as a wizard's apprentice. Once you've mastered that, you can move on to wizard level 1, and you can buy the advantages in that, and you gain access to the spells. And then when you've completed that, you can move on to level 2, level 3, level 4, gaining access to more skills, gaining access to more spells, gaining more and more power. So while it's not really level-based, they've kind of crowbarred in levels to wizards so they can have the levels of spells included. But apart from that, it is fairly straightforward. You gain experience and you can buy different improvements for your character, but these are limited by the career that you're in. Now, another game which uses a method where you're getting experience and spending it as you want is Bushido. But instead of experience points, what you're getting is time between adventures. So your character goes and trains. And when they train, they can then improve their attributes, and all skills in Bushido are based on your attributes. So when you've got a few weeks spare, you go and train, and you get a +1 bonus that you can add to one of your attributes. Now, this doesn't change, so it's not like it takes 1 month to train a skill to level 1, 2 months to level 2. It's always the same amount of time, buys you a +1 bonus that you can add to any of your attributes. Now, Star Trek uses a system where you mark off skills as you use it. Now, this is fairly common, that in each adventure, you mark off what skills you use. And at the end of the game session, or the end of the adventure in Star Trek, you roll on each of those skills. And if you fail the roll, then that skill improves, because obviously it's not high enough. So this encourages players to try a lot of different things, to use a lot of their skills, so they will improve at the end of the adventure. The characters that only stick to the things that they're good at will generally succeed those rolls, so won't improve at the end of the adventure. So this encourages players to try things a bit differently. Now, a lot of games use a similar method to this, where you mark off the skills that you've tried, and you make a roll on that skill, or you can only spend experience on those skills. And finally, the price of freedom. Because why not? When do I ever get a chance to drag out my prized copy of the Price of Freedom? Price of Freedom handles it by, at the end of the adventure, the Games Master hands out skill points, and you add those directly to skills. However, he might allocate them in particular areas. So here is a combat skill point, here is a knowledge skill point, etc. And you can only spend them within those groups. Now he'll hand out those skill points based on your role-playing, on your success, on the ideas, etc. But he's handing out direct skill points, and these do not scale with level. So if you're increasing a skill from 4 to 5, it doesn't cost anything more than increasing a skill from 1 to 2. You're just getting a skill point and you add it onto one of your skills. So here we are on the computer, and I've opened up the Google Doc of the rules that we're coming up together for this game. And hopefully I'll remember to link it down below. I've been pretty good on the recent videos, so if you check out the description down below, there should be a link to this. Now, as usual, not much has changed. We've got the introduction using the quote from the Dungeons & Dragons religious pamphlet. The most effective, most magnificently packaged, most profitably marketed, thoroughly researched introduction to the occult in man's recorded history. We've got the text from 1995. We've got the resolution system. All these that we've gone through in previous videos, which should all be in a playlist if you're interested in them. I've added a couple of things. There's things like demonic wings. I've added demonic visage. The life path I've customized slightly. I'd mentioned in the last video that perhaps I would extend it and you would add 1+1 to the roll for every year you stayed in a career. Now, a suggestion was to treat it like advantage or disadvantage in Dungeons & Dragons. So what I've said is for every 2 years you stay in a career, you add an extra d6 to the roll and you take the highest. So that increases the chance that you'll be kicked out of a career, encouraging you to move on, because there's no real advantage of being kicked out, so you'll move between careers more often rather than take the chance that you're going to get one of the more disadvantageous abilities. And at the bottom, I've added advancement. Well, what scheme have I gone for? I've gone for points buy. So you get experience and you spend it on skills. And I've gone with a very similar system to Shadowrun, because I feel that's a very flexible system, that you can customize your character. You're not stuck into a class like Dungeons & Dragons, not even stuck into a career like Warhammer, where you have to buy things to that character stereotype. You can decide what you want. You can decide that somebody else has been doing something, or the party is all sneaky, and you didn't create your character with that in mind, so you want to buy up your sneak abilities. So experience is spent to increase skills at the below costs. Each skill can only be increased by 1 level in an adventure when it's being used. It may only be increased by 1 point. The cost to increase a skill by 1 level is its current level times 2. So as skills get higher, they cost more to increase. You can only increase ones when you're used in an adventure, and you can't save a bunch of experience and suddenly jump up on your skills. So if you get a lot of experience for a particularly long adventure, it's going to encourage people to diversify, to make their characters more flexible than absolutely concentrated and focused in one area. Although the higher costs will encourage people to use that experience to focus in, because obviously once you're getting up to higher skill levels, you're spending a lot of experience. I've also included that attributes may also be increased, although only one may be increased by 1 point per adventure. So you can only choose one attribute to increase, and you can only increase it by 1 point. You can't buy up a number of different attributes, and the cost is current level times 4. So attributes are added to multiple skills, so make you lots more flexible for buying them up instead. But they cost a lot more because they are far more useful. Now, we shall go on to damage systems and how we're going to handle that in the future. But for handling how we're spending experience and leveling characters, I think this sums it up. So I think I've whittled on for quite long enough as usual. So thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.